Welcome to the Full Dive Gaming Podcast, bringing you a full dive of all the news, discussion, and insights you need for virtual reality gaming. We're doing a special mini episode discussing the games we want to see for PSVR2. This podcast is brought to you by Asterion Products. If you don't know them already, I've covered them all over the place. There's two stands right here, their Aura V2 and their headphone stand on my desk. They look beautiful with some RGB lighting. Code FULLDIVE10 is going to save you 10% on Amazon. I'm Jay Rat. I'm a VR YouTuber, sometimes streamer. I really need to start that again.
I'm Nat Brat, a VR enthusiast who wants to pet unicorns in VR.
I'm Lipnox VR, a VR YouTuber who is pretty jealous of all these PSVR2 videos right now.
Oh no, well, guess what we're here to talk about? Since this is a mini episode, we're going to jump right into that. We're going to be talking about PSVR2, but Assassin32 did ask a question on Discord that we touched on briefly in an episode, and we want to take it further, basically asking if someone had never owned the PSVR1, were there any exclusive titles that were so good it would get them to even consider buying one used and playing on it? Lip, you don't have the PSVR2 yet, maybe not planning to get one anytime in the near future. Is there a game from the past that if it came out today, you'd be like, ooh, I got to get the PSVR2 now?
So admittedly, I've kind of misinterpreted this first question. I know we're going to go over some of our favorite PSVR1 titles for going into, getting ported to PSVR2. But I did have three things that are not in VR yet that would 100% make me absolutely need to buy a PSVR2. And simple list, Hogwarts Legacy just came out, and that game the way that the game does its engine, it would truly just transfer into being in VR pretty perfectly. Some of the platforming things might be a little bit awkward, but with Bone Lab, I think we could definitely get that kind of title. Another one that just recently came out is Atomic Hearts, and it looks beautiful. It's totally next gen. And it's kind of like BioShock, but it is one of those games that looks like a giant world of art. That game, if you had that in VR, I'd be like, okay, this is got to be it. And this other one is kind of a left field thing. I would love it if on PSVR2, you could have games that are cooperative or versus or something, but you have one player using the regular controller on the TV and then the second player in the VR headset. And I think if they had games like that I could get in and play, one person not in VR, one person not in VR, that would be a lot of fun. And I'd love to see that kind of thing. And that's something that you can't do on a Quest 2 or a Quest 3, except for I know there's some with a phone kind of thing, but that would be a very innovative feature. I think PSVR2 could kind of have pretty exclusively, and I'd love to see that. Yeah,
I fully agree. And while we're on the subject, I will throw out a game. Half-Life Alyx, there is some rumors it's coming to PSVR2, but I think for the crowd who's gone from PSVR1 to PSVR2, has never gotten a Quest, has never gotten the PC, that is like the one VR game that everyone wants to and wishes they've gotten to play. So as far as not PSVR1 games, that is the game that's got to make its way over. But Nat, maybe you can get us on track here with what are PSVR1 games? What's your top game that needs to come to PSVR2 that hasn't been announced yet?
I don't think this is going to be a surprise to anyone. I want Astrobot Rescue Mission on PSVR2. Even if it wasn't a sequel, even if it was exactly the same game, but just, upgraded with the new PSVR2 graphics and stuff and controllers. That's what I want. It's so fun. And I really find that it's tough going from having that huge library of games in PSVR1, and then you come to PSVR2, you have just this limited amount of stuff, not a ton of games that I'm really excited about. So I did want to ask everyone else, are there any other games that you're hoping to see to come to PSVR2? I would say not necessarily games that were on PSVR1, but maybe just other VR games or anything else that you'd want to see.
I got to say, you suddenly just made me think of something that I have never thought about for PSVR2. I wonder, because I guess it's, inside out tracking, if there's any way to use this traditional PS5 controller to play PSVR2 games, because that's the one thing with Astrobot is there's so many aspects that you really need to have the DualShock. You'd have to convert elements of the game because there's so many things to use a touchpad, and that would be a game that would take, you'd have to change some of the things to get it on PSVR2. But if they could just use the standard PS5 controller, that'd be just straight port, better resolution. That would definitely be awesome.
I think but it's got the light bar up here. I don't know, if there's any sort of infrared hidden in here that we don't know about that was preparing for that. But it seems like it's got to be possible. I agree.
I hope so.
But yeah, I guess getting back into the PSVR things, I mean, for me, looking at like the PSVR1 games that are in that selection of things. Like I made a pretty big list here of games, but I will say, and I always say this, the number one thing is always going to be Resident Evil 7, because that was, to me, perfection. And if you added the new controls they have for the Resident Evil 8 and upgraded visuals, since that title, Resident Evil 7, never did get a full, proper PSVR port, I think it would just be a shame for that one to just be lost in time. I don't know, Jay, what's your favorite? What's your number one PSVR1 game for?
Mine's got to be Farpoint, and I know there's no aim controller, so like either they'd have to go Pavlov style and let you dual wield with 2, or we got to get an aim controller 2.0. I would be okay if they make Farpoint 2 with an aim 2.0 and never port Farpoint 1 though. Like it would be okay with me if they just made a sequel, but it was such an interesting game, fun co-op versus, and now, I mean, with the new PS5, you could probably have like 4-on-4, maybe 8-on-8 versus modes with that game. It would be unreal. I'm really hoping it comes.
Yeah, and if you've
great story.
Yes, it really is. And if you've listened to this podcast very much when I've been on, you know that I am always kind of a hater for shooters, and Farpoint is a shooter, but it's awesome. And it has a story. Being able to play with others and the cool environment really brings me in. That would be really exciting for me too, if there was a Farpoint sequel.
Well, it was the one of the first, if only, PSVR1 games that I remember playing that I truly was like, this feels like a full game. This feels like a full campaign. Once it got the updates and added the multiplayer things and the extra modes, like it was a full thing. And most of the games, you had things like Job Simulator and Super Hot and stuff like that are like, they're fun, but they're all like tied into one thing. This was like go through a huge campaign, and a campaign for me, and maybe this is a little bit overrating it, but it felt like the Halo 1 for VR when I played it, to the point where I was like, this is something I'm really, really into, having a great time going through, that has tons of different elements, there's the great story, and it just felt like so much fun to play. And I definitely, they've got to be working on Farpoint 2. But maybe they could do something where they actually give you Farpoint 1 in Farpoint 2 as like a freebie extra thing. But either way, I think that would be a shame to lose that game over time.
Yeah, for sure. Another one I'm thinking of, which you brought to my mind, Lipnox, when you were talking about having a game where some people are outside kind of playing flat while someone else is playing in VR. Astro's Playroom, they had for PSVR 1, and that was so cool because you don't have to have like a whole bunch of headsets to play with several people. It can be like a party game where you have several people outside the headset, but you're all playing together, and just like more of that community aspect of gaming, which really I feel like is harder with some VR games, because if you're not, all playing in a room together, it just kind of loses some of that. So that would be really exciting.
A little confusing here. So Astro's Playroom was the PS5 flat version of Astro Bot. The VR Playroom was a VR game that was free on PSVR, and a lot of people didn't know about it. Like, it was kind of one of those hidden gems. But basically what it was, it used the characters, all the little Astro characters, not Astro himself, but like those same little robot figurines. And there was a bunch of different game modes in it. So it had like one game mode where you were a ghost hunter inside of VR, but your team on comms was in the van. And so the way it looked, you were in the VR headset, you go into this haunted house and you're looking around in it, but only your team, which is your friends sitting on the couch, can see on the TV where the ghosts actually are. And they have to like direct you, oh my gosh, it's up by the chandelier. And then you shoot your plasma ray at to try and grab it. And then if you hit where they said it was, you get it. There's a bunch of little games like that. And it made this really interesting couch co-op style of game that was just so cool. Lip, did you play that? And if you did, which one was your favorite?
I definitely played it. I think I remember there being one where one player was like a dinosaur or T-Rex or something. And I remember that being just tons of fun because I think you could like bash your head into things. And I remember that being a pretty legit experience. There was like 5 games on it, if I remember correctly. I think there was one with like a cat and a mouse. There was the ghost one. Trying to remember what all of them were.
So there's a cowboy one where there's one person in the headset and then there's people outside. There's like enemies or something, and they have like different facial features. Like some have a mustache or some have a hat or something. And the people on the outside
and I remember.
Can figure out like which one is the bad guy or something. And then
They have to
Person in the
tell you,
headset,
like,
shoots
he's got an
the bad
eye
guy.
patch on his left eye, and you're in a bar inside of VR. You can't see what they see on the screen, but you're looking at all these different people trying to figure out, okay, which one has an eye patch, which one has blue eyes, and you're the sheriff. You have to shoot that one before they end up shooting you.
I don't know why I'm so bad at remembering the names of things. I keep getting all them mixed up, like Astro's Playroom, VR Playroom. And I was like trying to call VR Worlds that was in PSVR1. I was trying to call it Horizon Worlds. I'm like, okay, no. So thanks for helping me out with that.
It's funny. So you're actually making me think about how good and how all these VR Playroom games were so good. This next weekend, Assassin32 from our Discord, who was at CES, we got to meet him in person there, and actually lives like less than an hour from me. We're actually going to all hang out and play VR games. And I'm like, geez, I think I need to have the PSVR1 out to show them that. Even though we have a PSVR2 now, that was so good. And it's such a unique idea that I can't believe there's not more games that have done it yet in VR.
Yeah.
I remember
It's
there's an
kinda
Acorn
shocking.
game or something like with a squirrel, and you can play that on Quest 2. But I think that's like one of the only games, and people are on mobile, but you have one person in the headset. But it's like, the way that PlayStation did it with that game was so good. It's, I assumed it was a power situation why they didn't do more games like that, but it's like the more power now. How cool would it be to have just all sorts of different things that are incorporating the family game night in VR just becomes perfect. And the thing is then people that are new to VR that maybe might get motion sick aren't spending, an hour at once in VR. They're spending little 5-minute periods, and you guys are swapping the headset back and forth. Some people are trying the VR mode, and I think that's a really cool thing.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
It is. And it also, if you have a VR hater, I think this is the way to kind of get them in. You invite them and 3 friends over and you say, oh yeah, we're going to play some games, but you can just do the couch side of it. And you get through a couple of these games and they're going to start getting pretty curious what it's like in the headset when someone puts it on. There's this one that's called Toy Wars where you're inside the headset and you have a Gatling gun, but everybody else is on the TV with dual shocks and they are these big mechanized characters and they're trying to defend you and your Gatling gun like a tower defense. They're trying to defend you from all the toys that are crawling out from under the bed and trying to attack you. And it's such a different experience too when you're sitting on the couch playing, like, oh, this is cool. But then you put the headset on, suddenly you're inside of that world you've been watching on the TV, and it's mind blowing. I
am kind of shocked some of the games that, and I know like some of these games we're talking about, like Astrobot, came out later in PSVR1's lifetime, but like VR Worlds and VR Playroom, those were there at launch, I think.
Worlds
Is that
was.
right?
Playroom, I think, might have been. It might have been later. I can't remember.
And I just don't understand. Like, it seems like, and Jay and I have talked about this a little bit, it seems like PlayStation is trying to bring people that maybe haven't tried VR before to try it. And like, oh, trying to have these big games like Horizon. But what about us that are like these loyal PSVR people, or even just, PlayStation people? I just feel like these games actually have more mass appeal and have more ability to like bring others in because they're more like party games you can play with friends. So I just don't really understand why they abandoned that.
Yeah.
And like VR World showed, it had all these experiences to showcase all the things that PSVR1 did so well. And we're not seeing that with PSVR2. Like all these different games that they have now don't necessarily show off all the cool things that PSVR2 does all at once. What other games do we want to see for PSVR2?
So I'd love to do like a quick, like some of these I'd love to talk about for, years and years, but yeah. I think there's some of the staple ones that I think, would just be great to have on PSVR2. And I mean, Wipeout VR was an amazing racing game. Star Wars Squadrons was an amazing flying Star Wars game that could totally use the boost in the graphics that the PSVR 2 can provide. Iron Man VR, which honestly looks amazing on the Quest 2 even. I'd love to see what that can look like on a PSVR 2 headset. Skyrim VR, which had big control issues trying to use the Move controllers. That would, I don't know if we'll ever see that because that's Microsoft now, but that would be, a dream game to have on a better headset and finally get the perfected official release of that kind of game, because that's a world you can just spend a lifetime in. Beat Saber obviously needs to get its upgrade for PSVR 2. Because that is just a staple VR game, and I know Meta's got it as exclusive, but they've been passing exclusives back and forth, and I could definitely see that getting the upgrade. It's already on PSVR1, so hopefully it's a free upgrade if you have the PSVR1 version. Blood and Truth, another game that I feel like one of the only things that really held it back was the performance of the PSVR1. I never played it with the Pro, and I know the graphics were a lot better with that version or that game, but that would be just really, really cool. Another one, which is sort of like, honestly, I don't think that many people would put this on their list, but I remember this game called Werewolves Within, which was this social game where you're around a fire, and one person was like werewolf. And you had different like roles, and you'd have your role hidden, but no one would officially know. And it's kind of, I think there's a game called Mafias or something like that in Town of Salem. And it's that kind of concept, but it just worked so well as a multiplayer game. It was a game that, admittedly for me, I spent enormous time playing online with a lot of the PSVR guys. And one of the guys that I played a lot of this was with Dave Station VR, who unfortunately passed away last year. But I know him from the PSVR Without Parole. They do these game cast things, and he loved that game. And we used to always get in and with the community and play that. And I had just amazing memories of that. And those kind of social VR games are just perfect. And without things like VR chat, I think it'd be a fun game for them to bring over to PSVR2. I doubt they ever will, but it's a hidden gem wish list kind of thing. But the main one that I was surprised it wasn't there at launch. Dreams absolutely needs to be on PSVR2 with the upgraded power. I think having the proper controllers, the inside-out tracking, people could make some really awesome things. And I think Dreams was the game for VR that felt the most hindered by the power of the PS4. Some of the games they put on that people created just looked so brutally blurry, especially if you had the just basic PS4. And I'd love to see Dreams come to PSVR2. I don't know if you guys have played any of these that you feel like, maybe you agree with me on, or, I know you guys have the other titles in your list too.
I feel like you did a great job of assembling the list of games that should be, but also the games I feel like most of them will never happen. Beat Saber at least has been confirmed. It's coming.
Okay, I didn't know that was confirmed.
I didn't know that either.
Well, and guess what? I'm going to probably pay for it for like the 10th time now, I've got to imagine, because I'm sure it's not going to be a free upgrade.
Oh my gosh.
Like, a lot of these games, they're older games that were really had a lot of potential, but it's been so long that I'll be shocked if even half of these show up. But I agree with you. I think Squadrons is probably the most likely on the list because, it used a DualShock that wasn't tracked and you were able to turn your head. So literally all that would need as an update would just be up the fidelity for it because it doesn't have any sort of tracking to worry about. Blood and Truth was so dependent on the original PSVR controllers and stuff, and it was like click to click movement that I don't imagine they would spend a lot of time to try and make revenue off that. But I think these are all good games that I wish would, but I feel like I'd be surprised, honestly, even if 3 of these on your list make it, I will be shocked.
I'm curious, what are the 3 you guys think are most likely from this list? Because I definitely feel like Squadrons has potential, and I feel like, because it's Sony, Dreams has gotta be one that's getting, I think they've already announced it's at some point going to get that PSVR2 upgrade, but
I think those and Iron Man, maybe, because Iron Man's kind of kept getting life. It's kept getting breathed into it. I think those are it. But I feel like Wipeout, super unlikely. Skyrim, super unlikely because they've already tried.
Most unlikely, I think.
Yeah, and they haven't made enough money each time they've tried to release it. So I just really doubt with RE8 being out, I don't think they'll see it as being a significant enough investment to redo RE7. We might get RE7 with the DualSense, like the DualShock worked, not full VR support, but you can look around in VR. I could see maybe that happening, but I don't see them remapping the controls for 2-handed weapons and everything, but I wish. I wish.
Yeah.
Nat, I think you had a couple more, didn't you?
I have a couple more, and one of them I'm really excited. Actually, we know the sequel is going to be on PSVR2 soon. So I loved Rush of Blood. I really like the roller coaster things in VR because I cannot do roller coasters in real life. So in VR, it's just enough that it's exciting, but I can still do it without being terrified. And so, which is funny because it's also a scary game. So it's like, I'm terrified in other ways. So we're getting the sequel of Switchback VR. So very excited about that. Another one I would like to see is Walkabout Mini Golf. That's been a great, really fun one on Quest. So that would be a fun one.
I'm surprised that one's not already like a launch title because it seems like when you look at the list of the titles, it seems like that is a studio that is perfectly capable of getting something out quickly. And they've got so much awesome DLC. They could totally just do the deluxe version with all the DLC included and charge a premium price tag. And that would be great for multiplayer on the PSVR 2.
Yes.
Yeah, and they said it's coming soon.
Oh,
Okay, so it is confirmed.
That is
Okay.
confirmed.
No, I just apparently don't stay up on what is going to come to it. We'll see what soon means. And then my last one that I really want, ever since like back in the day playing on, I don't even remember what
Gear
headset. Gear VR, Minecraft. Minecraft VR is so freaking awesome because you're like in the world, you can explore. I just like exploring in VR. I really want Minecraft to come to PSVR 2, please.
That was the one on your list that I was like, I totally missed that on my list. I definitely missed out on that. But because of the whole, honestly, it was surprising when it even came to PSVR 1 at the timing it finally came.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's not gotten any mention of Quest ports of any kind, I really don't think Microsoft's into VR enough to care to put this in. And it feels like even the PSVR 1, it was like in development for long enough. They just said, here you go, have it.
Yeah.
But I guarantee you that would be a perfect one for PSVR 2. But that is honestly with the level of Skyrim VR for me in likelihood.
I think it's pretty
really
likely, but I think in that what will happen is it'll be the same one that was on PSVR 1. It'll be the console edition. It will be you turn your head to look and aim blocks, but otherwise you just use the controller the exact same way you play on console, which was how PSVR 1 was. So a lot of people were disappointed.
Yeah, I know.
You
It's so hilarious when things were better on Gear VR, a phone-based VR, than on like these amazing new headsets. Like, come on.
Well, it's funny on SideQuest there is someone that made a Minecraft version for Quest, but it's like unofficial, and you need to sign into your like Microsoft account to check that you have an active copy of the game on your account and everything, and it just seems like an extra hurdle to go through to set all that up because you have to sideload it and everything. It's one of those titles that is perfect for VR, and it looks so crisp in the headset when you play it because of the way the blocks look that it's upsetting that Microsoft isn't putting a bigger push into VR, because I'd love to just have the Xbox Series X connect with the Quest and be like, here's your PC VR experience with an Xbox.
Yeah, that would be very exciting. I like adventures in VR or in Minecraft VR.
Well, that's a lot of games that we're hoping, and honestly, I think our hopes are going to be dashed on quite a few of them. But we'd love to hear out there, what are yours on your list? If you're here on YouTube, of course, you can comment down here. If you're listening to us on the go, but you haven't joined the Discord yet, you've been thinking about it, we'd love to have you in there. You can talk to us about it, and of course, ask us questions for the Q&A. That always is overloaded with questions at the moment, but on the next episode, we'll be answering a bunch of those too. You can take it a step further and support us on Patreon if you want, but either way, if you're showing up, if you're listening to us here, if you're watching us on YouTube, you're supporting us already, and we want to say a huge thank you. Really.
Yeah, huge thank you.
It means a lot. And if you've been thinking about VR, there's now the PSVR 2, the Quest 3, it might be coming out this fall. It's probably time to dive on in.
Dive on in.